My son Matthew was sitting across the table from me at the Elk in Brown's Addition. It was a Tuesday, the Tuesday after Spike and Dig, which is billed as the annual outdoor 6-on-6 co-ed volleyball tournament held here in Spokane at Dwight Merkel. And Matthew had played for many years, and usually I would find myself down at the courts over the weekend to see at least a couple of the games. But this particular weekend, I had all kinds of other plans, and so I wasn't able to make it. But Matthew and I had a standing weekly dinner date, and so I knew that I would catch up with him and hear about it this evening. And Matthew told me all about the weekend and that his team, for the very first time, had won their bracket and got the championship t-shirt, and he was so excited. And then about 45 minutes into our conversation, he said, "Hey, Mom, I don't want to freak you out." And he unbuttoned the first 3 buttons on his work shirt and pulled aside his collar to reveal a large swelling on his neck. And I said, "Ooh, Matthew, when did you notice that?" And he said, "Well, Friday at work, I noticed it and I took a picture of it, but we didn't have any subs at Spike and Dig. And I knew if I wasn't there, we would have to forfeit. And so I Googled it, and Google said to just keep an eye on it for a couple weeks. And if after a couple weeks it was still swollen, go get it checked out." And across the table from Matthew, I was then looking at my Google for urgent cares in Spokane Valley, near where Matthew lives. He really did not want to go to urgent care. And this was nothing. He had just turned 26. He was off my insurance. This was something to consider. But I assured him that we should probably go check it out and to just maybe humor me. And so what do you do when you're 26 and your mom is momming you and begging you to follow her over to the urgent care? You begrudgingly, with some eye rolls and everything, follow her. On the way driving to the valley, I really thought this is probably an infection and they're going to give him some antibiotics and I'll help Matthew pay for the bill and we'll be on our way with our evening. So we got to the urgent care and the medical assistant and the doctor saw him quite quickly. It wasn't very busy. And they were asking him questions about other symptoms, and the answer was no to all of it. It would have been so annoying to be minimized or dismissed or brushed off, but I really wanted to be. I wanted them to send us on our way and roll their eyes at me being dramatic, and that did not happen. They advised Matthew that we should go across the street to the emergency room at the hospital. And that was not what we wanted to hear. Matthew really did not want to go to the emergency room. And I assured him that he didn't have to, but I really thought he should go get it checked out. When we walked in, they triaged him and asked him, "Matthew, have you been having shortness of breath?" "No." "Have you been having night sweats?" "No." "Have you been having chills?" "No." He's like, "I just won Spike and Dig. Our team, we got the championship. I feel great." And they brought him into a room and they started with a chest x-ray. And I was so thankful that we were wearing masks because my contorted lips that were trying to keep it together as this was not going how I thought it would was covered. But I could tell that the fear in my eyes was not being hidden because I could see it in Matthew's as well. They sent him for a CT scan of his head and neck. And through the night, I had been texting with the other kids, Josh and RC, who are in Bellingham, and Ash and Rachel here in Spokane, and letting them know that Matthew and I were at the urgent care and then at the emergency room with this weird swelling on his neck. And as the night got on and now it's 10 o'clock, I'm really hoping that they'll just go to sleep because this is terrible news to receive late at night. And Josh was pretty persistent in texting me outside of the group chat and wanted to know what was going on. When Matthew came back from the CT scan, the doctor came in and told him that based on what he saw in the scan, he believed that Matthew either had leukemia or lymphoma. This was so scary. And they sent him for a second CT scan of his abdomen and torso. And when he came back from that, we called Josh on speakerphone, and Matthew said the words out loud for the first time. "They think I have cancer." The oncologist in the emergency room came in and talked to us about what we could expect the next 6 days and the next 6 months, and gave us this key that we did not want of this world, that we did not want to belong to, and sent us on our way. My friend Melissa had come to the emergency room, and so I said goodbye to her, and Matthew and I walked. By the time I got to his car, he was on the phone with his friend KJ, crying and swearing. It was so surreal to be holding this thing that had been handed to us and wonder, what do you do now? And I drove home to the house that I live in alone, thinking, how will I sleep? What do I do? The next day was me calling out for the rest of the week to work and telling the kids what was going on, and Josh and RC driving over from Bellingham. And Friday, my 26-year-old son Matthew went under the knife for the first time for a biopsy. And we all sat in the waiting room with masks on and fear in our eyes as we waited. We met with the oncologist the next Tuesday and saw the scan, and it was full of darkness. Matthew had a PET scan that week. He had an echocardiogram. He had a pulmonary test. He had the port placed. And the oncologist showed us the darkness that was all across his abdomen and his very enlarged spleen and all the way up his chest into where it finally revealed itself externally in his neck. On Sunday, we all gathered. We just wanted to be together. We went to Matthew's and played games and ate. And then Tuesday, 2 weeks from that night at the Elk, Matthew went for his first round of chemotherapy. And so many people asked me if he would move in with me. And it's a fair question. You know, what do you do when you need care, but you don't want to lose all your independence? And what do you do as the mom who wants to care? But Matthew didn't move in with me. We came up with this rhythm on chemo days where he would drive to my house and I would put lidocaine cream on his port site and cover it with saran wrap, and we would drive to Deaconess and take the elevator to the 7th floor. We all bought purple Crocs that matched to wear on chemo days. And sometimes it was just Matthew and I, and sometimes Josh and RC were here to sit with us, and sometimes Ash got off work early, or sometimes Rachel had the day off. And Matthew just was so kind and funny and gracious through all of it, even when we would have understood him not behaving like that. After chemo, we would come back to my house and chat for a little bit before he needed to drive himself home before the extreme exhaustion overtook him. And then I told him that I needed to lay eyes on him every day that week, that first week after the treatment. You know, being a single mom of 6 kids, one of the things that I taught them was, like, if you can do it yourself, you shouldn't ask for help. But we kind of had to unlearn that now and identify what we needed and receive the help that was being offered and learn to ask for it as well. And so every day after that treatment, I would go to Matthew's and bring Uncrustables or Gatorade or whatever else might sound appetizing and just see him and look in his eyes. And then by the end of the week, he would start feeling better and having an appetite, and I would bring over meals and things to sustain him and keep his strength up. He would go back to work sometimes, or he would just recover until the next Tuesday when it was time for his next treatment. 3 months in, he had another PET scan. And when we met with the oncologist said, "Matthew, the chemo's working. You're cancer-free. And you will have 3 more months of chemo because we want to make sure we got it all." And it was so hard to hold both of these things. People would ask how it was going, and I could say that he was cancer-free, but it felt very strange to be congratulated and celebrating. It was too soon. I wasn't ready for it. And so holding both of these things, especially watching Matthew get sicker and sicker and take longer and longer to recover between treatments. January 21st of this year, Matthew had his final treatment. And I've called the time since after grief. It's hard to know when people want to know, how's Matthew doing? And it feels so fraudulent to say, he's so good. It feels so minimizing. We've all been through such trauma, and we held this big thing that was so unwieldy, and we're changed for it, but how? I mean, there's a lot more I love yous and a lot more hugs between us, and I think there is a closeness that will be there forever. I hope so. But how do we not minimize it and brush it off and dismiss this experience that we've had? I don't know. I'm not sure. It's called after grief, and I've never done it before.